Chapter 11, Highland Avenue, one new rifle. The settler boy was 12 the winter his father gave him the gun. A small thing, walnut stock, iron barrel, meant for rabbits and foxes. A gift to mark the age when a boy was supposed to become something more. He showed it to his friend the next morning, pride swelling in his chest. They slipped into the woods before the sun had burned the frost off the grass, daring each other deeper and deeper until the trees grew thick and the air felt different. They had crossed the boundary line long before either of them admitted it. Indian land. They both knew it. They weren't hunting anything in particular. They were hunting the feeling, the thrill of holding a weapon, the idea of being men. They whispered and laughed and tried to walk quietly, though neither of them knew how. That's when they saw him. A boy their age, maybe younger, gathering kindling near a fallen birch. He looked up, startled. They froze. No one spoke. Later, neither of them could say who moved first. Whether the settler boy raised the gun or whether his friend nudged him or whether fear did the lifting. The shot cracked through the trees, louder than either of them expected. The Indian boy fell. For a heartbeat they felt it, the rush, the power, the terrible pride of having done something irreversible. Hunters. Men. Then the silence came. The settler boy dropped the gun. His friend picked up the gun and grabbed his arm. They ran, stumbling over roots, branches whipping their faces, breath tearing in their throats. They didn't speak of it again. They didn't tell their fathers. They didn't return for the body. The woods kept the secret. The land did not. The new police SUV sat in the dollar store parking lot, its engine a low, expensive hum. To Officer Dale Haskell, it was a state-of-the-art miracle, a beacon of modern authority in a town that usually felt like it was stuck in a postcard from 1950. He felt like king shit behind the wheel. He was marveling at his new MDT computer system, casting its blue glow in the car. His hand resting near the toggle for the brightest halogen emergency lights ever produced. Beside him, Officer Stephen Shadd was nonplussed. He was preoccupied with a burrito, his lap a fortress of napkins as he tried to keep salsa off his crisp uniform. When the 1031 came over the wire, a suspected break-in at Highland Avenue, Haskell didn't hesitate. He slammed the vehicle into gear, the siren a high-tech scream that tore through the quiet evening as they hit 80 in a 35. They found Ms. Carlyle on the sidewalk, her face a mask of frantic terror. "I saw a shadow," she stammered, pointing a shaking finger at the upstairs window. "The drapes, they closed themselves as I pulled in." She was frantic. The officers drew their weapons. The weight of the steel felt small, safe, and familiar, a comfort against the sudden, unnatural chill that rolled off the porch. They announced themselves, their voices echoing through the foyer, but the house didn't feel empty. It felt occupied by a stale, decaying silence. "Hello," Officer Haskell announced. "This is the Jewel Town PD. If anyone is here, you to come out with your hands raised." He moved to the hallway, gun raised, and announced again. He felt a fear grip him, and his mind had no explanation as to why the fear was so intense. Officer Shadd moved slightly ahead of him. As they moved deeper, they heard it. A murmur of voices, shifting like the river whispering behind the wallpaper. Then, a voice cut through, clear, cold, and heavy with a century of ownership. "Get out." Both men stopped and looked at each other in disbelief and bewilderment. Before their minds had time to rationalize or make sense, the voice came again, even louder. "Get out." The voice seemed to emanate from the center of the room with no visible source. Both men attempted to mask the fear they were experiencing, but Officer Shadd's hands were shaking, and the barrel of the gun kept dipping. Despite his fear, Officer Shadd began to make his way towards the stairs. As he did so, Officer Haskell gasped. A searing heat bloomed between his shoulder blades. It burned through his shirt and into his skin. As Shadd made his way up the stairs, eyes sweeping, he heard heavy thuds above him, and for the first time in his career, he looked at his service weapon and realized, what good is a gun in this situation? Shadd began to move through the hallway, the quiet beginning to crack with every footstep. The smell hit him at the bedroom door. It was unbearable, a stench of rotting meat and stale earth and old, stagnant blood. He cleared the rooms in a blur of nausea, finding nothing but the rhythmic, grieving sound of voices that had no lungs. Finding nothing and no source for the sounds, he stumbled down the stairs. He retreated, stumbling through the living room and outside into the front yard. He staggered towards his vehicle and vomited on the manicured front lawn before leaning on the hood of the vehicle and blacking out. Ms. Carlyle sat watching in abject horror at the condition of the two large men. One collapsed on the hood of the vehicle, the other hunched over attempting to breathe. Minutes later, a EMS arrived, and Officer Shadd was taken to the hospital. Officer Haskell had done his very best to compose himself and talk to Ms. Carlyle. They both thought it best that she not re-enter the house until the next day, and perhaps other officers could investigate. He actually had to admit that, as crazy as it seemed, he had never experienced anything like it in his career. He felt the house had paranormal activity. In this instance, Ms. Carlyle put up no protest. Nodding her head in resignation, she agreed. The return to the station was a funeral procession. The halogen lights of the SUV flickered erratically, the miracle electronics struggling against a surge they weren't built to handle. Inside the station, the atmosphere was thick, like the humidity before a storm that never breaks. The Jeweltown police station was a place of fluorescent lights and paperwork, a sanctuary of the mundane. But tonight the other officers weren't typing. They were watching. In the back of everyone's minds, the truth was fermenting. These occurrences were increasing. Every man in the room had heard a story this week. A shadow at the mill, a voice in an empty cell, a cold spot that wouldn't leave. Report, Sergeant Miller barked. He was a man built like the town's stone walls. House was secure, Haskell lied, his voice a dry rasp. Shadd, he had heat exhaustion, passed out on the hood. Was the hopeful insistence of the town, the desperate need to keep the postcard-perfect image intact. But when Haskell went to the locker room and pulled off his shirt, the lie died. In the mirror, deeply etched into the skin between his shoulder blades, were the dark, red outlines of 3 long, spindly fingers. It wasn't until the following morning that Officer Haskell finally walked back into the station. He looked like he hadn't slept. He asked for Miller, closed the office door behind them, and, after a long, shaky breath, said he needed to amend his report. Under normal circumstances, a story like his would have earned a smirk, maybe a quiet joke passed around the bullpen. But these weren't normal circumstances. The phones had been ringing since dawn. People from every corner of town were reporting things they couldn't explain. Lights in the woods, figures on porches, animals behaving wrong, a pressure in the air no one had words for. By the time Haskell finished talking, Miller wasn't laughing. No one was.